go ahead. I'm going to go to Canvas here just so I can talk a little bit about what we're doing. You'll notice that really there's only 3 assignments. There's a reflection, but there's really only 3 assignments this week. It's because today's homework is going to take you a while. It's going to take you a minute, and it's your first real actual illustration where you get to, have some real creative freedom with it, okay? So have fun with it. Spend, today and a little bit tomorrow. I'm not going to lecture tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be pure lab, right? I'll be here for questions, but I'm not going to talk. Knock on wood. Product. So anyway, that's what we're doing tomorrow. We're just going to continue working on it. It's due Friday. Atmospheric perspective. That is the topic du jour. All right. So we've done 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective, and I'm not complicating your life by creating another, dimension of perspective. All right. That's as far as I can go. All right. But there is another way of creating depth. Actually, there's 2 ways that we're going to talk about today, and that is through what's called atmospheric perspective. Now, if you've ever noticed where you've gotten to view something at a distance, the further away something is, the lighter it gets, right? That's because in between you and that object is atmosphere and a bunch of crap in the air. That's a technical term, right? All right, so for those of you in Radio Land, I didn't just say crap. It's dust, dust, water, all that kind of stuff that is between you and that object. And the further away that object is, the more stuff that's intervening gets in the way and lightens up that object. All right, so if you can see here, the objects in the foreground are nice and vibrant and clear and crisp. And even this house right here suddenly becomes lighter. Lighter still. This object here is getting fairly light, but this one way back here is very light. This one right here, it looks like this is the furthest object in the distance, is quite light on the page. So you get this sensation of it receding into space by the illusion created in atmospheric perspective. All right. So here's some examples. Can you see the figure? Giant figure there. So it looks like that's really foggy. That's a form of atmospheric perspective. All right. You can tell I'm a sci-fi fan just by my selections, right? Okay. So, this right here, being the closest sort of object that you can see, is the darkest. And as soon as we sort of step, if I were to guess, maybe 20 feet away, it starts to lighten up. You can see it happening right in here, especially right in here. And then the outside sort of ramparts, or whatever you call those, quite light, lighter still. I'm not even sure. That might be part of the castle. All right, up there, it's way light. It's almost the color of the background sky. It happens in photography too. I think this is Mount Rainier. If you've never had an opportunity to see Mount Rainier, you got to take it. It's gorgeous. All right, so we got very clear stuff here in the foreground, a little bit lighter. You see the trees are a little bit lighter. Then you got another range of trees, lighter, lighter still, very light back here. Okay, so no questions on atmospheric perspective, right? That all makes perfect sense how that effect works. Depth of field. This is a camera effect. All right, so we've got photographers in the room, right, Travis? How would you describe depth of field?
Kind of like it focuses on what object, like you kind of, for example, the rock, like your main focus is that.
Yeah.
And like if you let your focus like out more, you see everything.
Yeah.
Like more focusing on one point.
Yeah, so the more intense your focus is on a certain plane, a certain distance away, the more out of focus everything else becomes. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how the lens works, all right? There are some cameras that you can get some really super interesting depth of field with. The old, you know, those old-timey cameras that have the sort of accordion fold in the middle. Those are 4x5. They call them 4x5 cameras. That is the size of the film plate, right? So the negative that's on there. And by adjusting the distance of the lens to the film plate and also changing the aspect, its angle, apparently they can create these effects where it's like the focus is slicing through the object. You'll see something in focus up here, down here, and then everything else is out of focus. I don't know how it's done, but there are some really interesting, that style of photography really is an art form to create that depth of field. So can you see how this affects your perception of depth? That going in and out of focus. Does that make some sense, Gavin? Is that, you understand? You've seen this effect before, haven't you? Okay. Well, you put it on. You put it on that depth of field on a highly foreshortened object, and you got real depth, right? Right? That hand is like coming way out at you, and I'm just afraid she's going to palm my forehead. All right. So we've got our pool balls. All right, very well defined in focus here. This object even is getting a little bit fuzzy along the top. So that's actually starting to go out of focus right there, but this right here is actually quite crisp. So that is a very, very narrow range depth of field. And then we've got, looks like the 6 ball out here and the edge of the pool table completely blurred out. Okay, so those are the two effects that we're working with. Epic movie poster. You guys get to work on your brand just a little bit. So what this is a little bit of a self-expression. You get to tell a little bit of your story, all right? So you're going to download that file. That's going to be the size you're working with, okay, the page size that you're working with. And all you need is human figure, right? That's you. Some objects where you create atmospheric perspective and depth of field, and I'll show you how to do some of those things in just a second, and a headline. That's all you need, okay? Now, you color it however you want to, just keeping in mind that this is kind of telling your story. What are your colors? What is the story you want to tell? You got a couple of days to do it, so I wouldn't take a real fine-tooth comb to this. I would kind of do it quick and dirty, all right, because there's just not a lot of time. So I would keep it simple. When I created this, I created a pen tool shape right there, a pen tool shape right there, and another one going off in the distance. There's basically 6 shapes plus the background, right? So that's 7 with a rectangle. And then I use the illustration of the man. I think it's already in the document. So there's, I think, 8 shapes in there. I mean, that's simple construction, okay? So I would say keep it simple. And then some text. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and open this up and just give you an example of how you might accomplish some of this stuff. Back and extract. I'm just making sure that we've got you don't have to use the human shapes that are in the document. You can make your own if you want to. I just thought to be more convenient, put those in there. Okay, yeah, you don't have to use those. Those were convenient on the web. I just outlined them. Okay. Let's see here. So, objects receding into the distance. Usually you're going to be smaller, right? So I'll go ahead and make an object here. and be really efficient with it. So let's say I've got a green box here, and I want to make several green boxes that go off into the distance. First, I'm going to turn off my smart guides. I'm going to make this go off into the distance. So the closer objects are going to be larger. The objects as they recede into the distance are going to get smaller. That's foreshortening. That's a form of scale. But I also want to create that effect of atmospheric perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, paste in front. Now this is, you're not doing this unless it's just for practice, right? This is not your actual poster. Please don't anybody turn in your poster with a green box on it. Okay, so I'm copying it, and I pasted it in front using Control F. Control C, Control F. So that pastes it right directly on top. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my fill. I'm going to find kind of a gray-blue. All right, so if I don't find exactly what I'm looking for, I could make it. I'll go ahead and just show you how that's done. So if I don't find the exact color I want here, I can go down here in my swatches to this new swatch icon. I click on it. There are different color models here. You'll see this color model is RGB. I find that one a little bit complex to work with. There's an easier one in here called HSB. What that stands for is hue, saturation, brightness, which we're going to cover a little bit later on. Okay, if I take my saturation and my hue all the way to the top, what I'm getting is pure color. All right, so now I change my hue to kind of a bluish color, somewhere in here. That would be good. Okay, now I'm going to pull my saturation back. What that does is it decreases the color purity, and I'm also going to make it a little bit darker. All right, so let's say I'm going to start with a color like that. So this is kind of my gray-blue. I like that gray-blue. I'm going to work with it. Okay, so now when you create that, it shows up in your swatches like this. Okay, so don't be confused here. I got two objects. One is that gray-blue. One is the green behind it. Now I'm going to change in properties. I'm going to change my opacity to, let's say, I change it to 10% because it's very close. Or even I'll change it to 0% because it's the closest object. Okay? So now I'm going to copy some of these into the distance. I'm going to hold down Alt and drag it, and that makes it smaller. Go ahead and do this. Okay? And then I'm going to send it to back so that we get proper overlapping. Now, because it's going off into the distance, I'm going to start to activate that, that top layer on there and change its opacity to, let's say I'm going to change it to 30%. Ooh, that changes things, doesn't it? It's not very strong up there. I think maybe I didn't get this color light enough. So let's go, I'm going to go back into my, where's my swatches? There we go. Go back into my swatches and change my color here. And I think I want it to be a little lighter. Okay, yeah, it's starting to look a little bit better now. I'll go ahead and copy this again. Oops. Forgot to hold Alt while I was doing that. Make it a bit smaller still. Send it to back with my Control Shift left brace. And I'm going to take my opacity up to, let's say, 80%. So it's getting further and further into the background. I'm not liking how dark that is. It still feels really dark to me. So maybe what I want to do is I want to change the green also that's behind it. So I could do that kind of thing. Take this, change the color on that. Come on, you. Take that color to something like that. That's better. So whatever works. All right, there's not necessarily a right way to do this, whatever works. If I used a background color behind this whole thing and I set my scene, let's say create a gradient, linear gradient. Oops, I need to select it first, doesn't work otherwise. Okay. So I'm sort of creating a ground and sky. I'm not liking that very much. Oh. Actually, that would work. Get the impression that that is fading into the background color. Would be more realistic. Okay, so when you're satisfied with your atmospheric perspective, and I'm not saying that I am, but when you are, what you want to do is decide where your depth of focus is going to be. So if I want this foreground object to be clear and crisp, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to first lock this object. Lock the selection. I'm going to come back here and grab this one right here, and I'm going to go to the Effect menu, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay, I'm going to turn on my preview and kind of see how blurry it really is. Okay, you decide what that's going to be, and I say, okay. So this one is at 7 points, blur. So this one should be more or less. Should be more, right? So blur, Gaussian blur, preview, turn that on, should be more. I don't know how much more, something like that. So you get that impression that you got that depth of focus, that camera working to create your focus, and then things get further and further away, lighter and blurrier. That could be fun. There we go. Got a little overlapping too. I don't know what title I would put with that. Anyway, have fun with this. I'm done talking unless you guys have questions. You have questions about the project or how you might accomplish it? Do you guys have ideas? You got an idea? You don't know how you're going to do it, but you've got an idea what you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay, good. Well, having an idea is your first place. You got to start there.